You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension. A dimension of truth. A dimension of freedom. A dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the capitalist corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the capitalist corner.
Yes, folks, where reason meets reality, I meet you, and Persephone watches from the background as it all goes down. Welcome to the new week. Welcome to the Capitalist Corner. I, of course, am your host, Michael Leibowitz. Mark is not here today, but I do have some announcements for the upcoming week. But first, remember to like, share, and subscribe to this show. Remember to share it from YouTube to your favorite social media destinations. And also remember that while Mark is the chairman of the American Capitalist Party and I am the vice chairman, this show is not affiliated with the American Capitalist Party, and the views expressed here are our own. Also, my own podcast, The Rational Egoist. I should have a great episode coming out tomorrow on the 1619 Project. And later this week, I will have one coming out. I'm interviewing Robert Trzynski about his new book about Donald Trump, Dictator from Day One. So I'm looking forward to that. Now, I said we had some announcements for this week, and I do. So Wednesday, Mark will be back, and we should be joined by Megan Ribbons, the great objectivist biologist. She should be joining us for a discussion perhaps about education. Maybe we'll get her take on some current events. Then Thursday, we have Jim Valiant is going to be with us, and we are going to do a special show dedicated entirely to the ideas of Charlie Kirk. We are going to break them down. We are going to analyze them, and we are going to give you our best takes on them. Friday, the show will not be on at 12 o'clock. I will do the show. I just have an interview to do at 12, so I don't know exactly when this show will be airing, but I will let you know, and we will definitely be doing a show. So there's a bunch of articles today about another drug boat was bombed by the United States off the Venezuelan coast. There's an article, where is it here? The Epoch Times. It's pronounced epoch, not epic and not epoch. It's epoch, like epoch. I looked it up. That's what it is. What do you want from me? Persephone's got this look on her face like I'm lying, but she can look it up herself if she doubts my expertise in this matter. Reason Magazine has an article about it. Now, there's a lot of legal arguments against doing this, against bombing boats that we think are smuggling drugs, constitutional arguments. But really what I'd like to discuss for just a moment at least is the moral case. Is the United States is now, first of all, let's just back up a little bit. This all stems from the war on drugs, which, again, we could argue the constitutionality of that, but more to the point, it's a woeful injustice that leads to more injustices. The first injustice is it stops people from being able to put into their own bodies that which they choose. It stops other people from being able to provide it to them. Well, I shouldn't say it stops. It attempts to stop this from happening. So that you have the rights violation there, and then in order to enforce these laws, you end up with very suspect search warrants, people getting pulled over, all that sort of thing. So the consequences sort of are just iterated down the line. Not to mention the fact that the illegality of the drugs, makes it a very lucrative black market profession, and the people that are involved in that business, is not like they call the cops when if somebody robs them, so they will turn around and shoot the guy. Very, very dangerous business, leading to gang wars and all kinds of things. And now, instead of dialing back the war on drugs, which is what we should be doing, both morally, and practically, we've got a situation where we're exacerbating, we're ramping it up. Trump says, well, they're terrorists, but of course they're only terrorists because he's labeled them terrorists, the alleged drug dealers. So you're bombing them. They've had no due process. They haven't been proved guilty in a court of law. So we are supposed to first off take Donald Trump's word for it that these are very dangerous people. They're drug dealers. They're cartel members. Forgive me if I doubt the Donald's word. He has demonstrated a woeful lack of concern for the truth. And he's also doesn't come off to me as very bright. Let's be honest. So I wouldn't even trust his judgment to say that they're drug dealers, even if you really believe that they were. Now, if you're selling drugs, right? If you're selling drugs, you are not violating anybody's rights, folks. You are not initiating violence. You are not initiating force. You are not stealing. You are not robbing. You are providing a product that somebody else wants. This is not something that warrants the death penalty. And Ian Gilmore says, even if found guilty, it's not a death penalty offense. So you're bombing these boats. One of them, I think, killed 17 people. These are human lives that you're killing. And, you know, I've seen comments out there. They said, oh, now we're going to stop the drugs from coming in. My ass, you are. Right? Where there is a demand at that level, somebody's going to figure out how to supply it. This is just silliness to claim that you're going to stop the supply of drugs. But really, it's just a woeful violation of rights. It's an exacerbation and an increase of government power and authority that we don't want the government to have. And it's just dangerous. And it always, people may think they can escape it when the government is doing bad things, but not doing it to them. But eventually that government is going to come back. Something is going to catch you. I think it was Barry Goldwater who said any government big enough to give you everything you want is big enough to take it all away. And the principle, of course, is that once the government's that big, it can do what it wants. This, in my view, is absolutely atrocious. Of course, the MAGA talking heads say anybody that doesn't want Trump to do this is defending terrorists. Of course, that's just propaganda, emotionalism, trying to deter people from speaking out against it or make them sound silly. But I for one won't be deterred, and I doubt anybody in this audience will be deterred because it's very bad policy. Very, very bad. Now, speaking of bad, there's a couple of stories today. Has everybody heard of the story about this candidate for the Virginia Attorney General? He's a Democrat running for Attorney General. Anybody heard the story of this? Persephone, nod if you've heard it. Persephone has heard it. I assure you she's nodding. I'm not making it up. I am not like Donald Trump. I don't just lie. So this guy, evidently a couple years ago, 2023, in private texts with somebody else or private emails, texts, tells somebody that he would like a legislator to die. Like he's calling for his murder. Now he's doing it in private text. So, but he says if you had 3 bullets and you had Pol Pot, Hitler, and whoever the guy is, I'd take 2 bullets and put it in this guy's head. He said, I would like to see his kids die in the wife's arms because that's when people move, when they feel the pain. Really just atrocious and vile, vile stuff coming from this attorney general candidate in Virginia. Now, look, I in my life have experienced in private conversations with people where people say things that they would never say in public, that they never mean to go public. But here's the thing. This guy is a public figure. He's running for office. It's a vile thing to say to start with, but when you're a public figure, you have to know better. Morally, he's not fit to serve, and his judgment, in my view, is off because you're that stupid as a public figure. You're going to send such a thing in a text. And now he's, of course, I'm sorry, it sickens me to see it. Yeah, I don't buy it, and not for 1 second. And as the last time I looked, no Democrats were calling for this guy to back out of the race. Not one. I don't know. I mean, if it had been a Republican doing it, I think the Democrats would be up in arms saying the person can get out. But in the same token, had it been a Republican, the Republicans probably would say, look, it was 2 years ago. It was private messages, whatever. So, politicians it's just a very grotesque business. And quite frankly, for me, I mean, I'm the vice chairman of a political party. I'm here doing a political talk show. I talk about politics an awful lot. I would much rather not. I would much rather talk about epistemology, ethics, self-improvement, psychology, that sort of stuff. The problem is you can't just divorce yourself from these conversations. We have to be constantly engaged or else they win. And by they, I mean the tyrants, the people who support the big, disgusting government, the rights violations. We have to constantly be on guard against them. I just wish that the world wasn't that way. Race Jacobson says, it was so sickening he never once had a reflex to shut his goddamn mouth through the whole tirade. Race Jacobson, you really have a way with words. You are a wordsmith, a modern day Bill Shakespeare, perhaps, in the way that you vent your viewpoints. I really, really appreciate it. Let me see what Persephone has over here. Chuck on Money says, isn't it the government who has to prove they can blow up these boats? There is no need to argue why it shouldn't be done. Constitution, legal, or moral. It should be, Chuck. The problem is nobody seems to care. I mean, nobody with any ability to stop this seems to care. So here comes a story. Unless anyone has a question about this, I certainly will comment further. There's well, let me talk about this first. In Connecticut, where I live, and this is a story that interests me. I hope you guys find it interesting, but maybe you don't. But it's about Connecticut prison, the prison that I happen to live in for about 18 years. Wait, hold on. Greg Lewis says, do I think tyrants can win against the population brushed up on their epistemology, ethics, and psychology? No. The problem is if we all spend all our time studying epistemology, ethics, and psychology is what happens in the meantime, and that's a serious, serious issue. So anyways, in McDougal Correctional Institution in Connecticut, I don't know if it was yesterday or over the weekend, whatever, it doesn't matter. But this guy, in prisons, you generally, in Connecticut, and you live with a cellmate. So you have two people living in about an 8x12 room, bottom bunk, top bunk. And this guy, he says he doesn't know why he did it, strangled his cellmate to death, carried him out on the tier. There's actually video footage of it. Takes him out, dumps him on one of the block tables, goes back into his cell, brushes his teeth, and then heads out to the day room for, I guess, recreation after he did this. Now, the reason this story has relevance to me is because I've, for a long time, thought there is no reason you should have people living together in a cell. You are putting basically two virtual sociopaths and telling them, here, learn to get along in an 8x12 cage. A halfwit could see that this is a volatile situation, especially now. Evidently, the guy, the cellmate, had been asking for a cell move. Now, I know from experience, asking for Cat Sterling, okay, distracting me. Okay, he'd been asking for a cell move and didn't get it, and that often takes time, sometimes a week, to get these cell moves. Now, so the argument, there's a couple of them, right? One is that the prisons are overcrowded. You don't have the space without doubling up the cells. Another argument is that these guys are all criminals. They deserve what they get. And if living in a cell sucks so bad with another guy, then they shouldn't be committing the crimes. Okay. This is a very intrinsicist view of justice, right? That in and of itself, this person needs to suffer. And so whatever the punishment is that he happens to suffer, it's okay. First of all, the guy who got killed in this situation was not in jail for murder. He did not have a death sentence, which effectively he ended up getting. Now, this is an extreme case. However, in these cells, you have arguments. Why are you leaving your stuff around? Why is the sink not clean? Why are you breathing so loud while I'm watching television? You know, and it's not as if you're dealing with reasonable people in this cage. So the situation arises where if you have one guy that's in this cage and he wants to turn his life around, so he starts educating, reading, meditating, things of that nature, journaling, you often have a cellmate who's very inconsiderate. He's blasting his TV, his radio, he's yelling out the door. So you can't focus on the things that you're trying to do to turn your life around. You also have a situation where if one guy in that cell wants to do drugs and the other guy doesn't, you can't tell him, hey, you can't do drugs. So now he's doing drugs in the cell. That's the cell gets shaken down. They find the dope in the cell. Both guys go down. Same thing with shanks, whatever that they find in the cell. Both guys go to seg. I just think that we can do better. First of all, if we got rid of the dumbass war on drugs, we would significantly reduce the prison population and the alleged need to double up cells. But furthermore, when I was in prison, now I was lucky. I had 11 years of a cellmate with my best friend who was also working on himself. The other times in my life when I've had cellmates, I was not so fortunate. Why not just diminish the cell size? Like, I would have much rather lived in a smaller cell than in a big cell with somebody else. So it seems like you could get rid of that problem doing that. But I really think it's a big problem that guys are forced to double up, and gals too, over at the women's joint. And Ian Gilmore points out that the jail sex assault stuff gets joked about, but it's the same problem. No one gets sentenced to getting assaulted. Absolutely, Ian. Absolutely. That's where the sexual assaults usually happen, is with cellmates. That they're not going out in the tier and raping somebody, but it happens. You get a situation where you get a guy, say he's 140, 150 pounds. You put him in there with a guy that bench presses 400, 500 pounds, and he simply cannot defend himself. There's nothing that he can do in that situation. So I wholeheartely think that there should be single rooms in prisons, and I think it would go to help with the rehabilitation of the inmate. And again, there's people who tell me, oh, I don't care if they get rehabilitated. They're in there to get punished. Okay, but they're getting out, man. Like, it's such a short-sighted idea, and it's such an intrinsicist view of justice. The entire point of all the virtues in objectivism is so that a person can act in his or her own interest. Right? It is including justice. I practice justice because it's in my interest to do so. It is not in my interest to send the guy into prison for 15, 20 years where he has to live in a cell, with various lunatics who won't let him do anything, who won't let him better himself, won't let him read. And now that guy gets released into society. It's simply not in my interest. It's not in your interest. It's not in our interest to do so. It is in our interest for the guys who are coming out of prison to be better than they were when they went in to the prison. So, speaking of the war on drugs, the Jacobin, that beacon of socialism, if I can find the article here, has an article today called Towards Anti-Capitalist Drug Policy. Okay. First of all, the solution to the war on drugs is capitalism. Free markets. You would significantly lower the price of the drugs because of the competition among the employers. They'd be legal. So you wouldn't have a situation where it's a black market. So that would lead to a lot less crime being committed in order to obtain the drugs. But you would also have a situation where they're competing, where drug dealers are competing in their actual stores. It's not in their interest to kill you. So you could find out what's in the drugs actually. So you would know the content, know the potency, know whether there was fentanyl in it or not. So the idea of anti-capitalist drug policy is just silly to me, because people should be free. People should be free to imbibe whatever they want. They should be free to sell whatever somebody else wants to buy, as long as they're not violating anybody else's rights. Simple. That's capitalism. But there's something very interesting at the bottom here. This article is in the format of an interview, but I want to go to the bottom where I find... Okay, I don't care. He's talking about far-right leaders, stuff that I don't care about. Now I've lost my link. I have a real hard time with technology, folks. I'm really sorry. The bottom line is okay, and I'm not even going to look for it. I remember what they said. What he wants to happen, the author of this article, the guy being interviewed, is when the drugs are no longer prohibited, he thinks that, I guess, affected populations or whatever. He wants the people who have gone to jail, not even the exact people, just people who look like the people who have been arrested, been in gang wars, or gone to jail. He wants them to benefit from the legalization of drugs. So, blacks, Hispanics, and whatnot will be the ones to get the licenses, basically granted a monopoly on selling these things. Now, as I pointed out, first of all, the people that are going to be buying it likely aren't the same people that were in prison for it. They definitely aren't the people that were killed over the war on drugs. So it's collectivist at its core. It's racialist. It's just dumb. They ought to just let it be. Laissez-faire for the drug markets. Kira Felix says, to most government intervention, Lee, not quite everything, but for the most part, they're talking about the benefits of capitalism, I believe. So the idea to me of anti-capitalist solutions to the war on drugs is just idiotic. I don't know a better word. I was trying to come up with some wordsmithy phrase, but it's idiotic. And I like numbers. Says you look like someone who was a slave. Yeah, so you should be benefiting from it, from from the drug legalization. This morning, there was a post on X, and it was about this house burning in South Carolina that belongs to a judge that has been criticized by Trump. So the implication of the post was that this was arson done by a Trump supporter. So I went in and I read the article. It turns out they don't even know yet that it's arson, right? So they don't know that it's arson, let alone that it was targeted arson, let alone that it was somebody from MAGA. This propensity for the people on each side of the political aisle, when something bad happens like this, violent or destruction, to run out and say, ah, ha, ha, the other side's violent, is just, you have to wait till the facts come in. It might really come out that it was a Trumpster that did this, but you can't just go out and say it with a straight face and think you're going to be credible when the very article that you're sharing with it says that they don't know that it was arson yet. As of 11:17 this morning, the last time I checked on it, they still did not know that it was arson. That type of thing takes time to find out it's arson. Then they'd have to find out who did it, why they did it. But nope, not in today's social media driven world where tribalism's at its peak, when everybody's dying to be able to say the other side is a bigger scumbag than my side. And by the way, the guy that posted it, I usually like his posts. Let me just say that. Like, I'm not trying to just be nasty to him. I normally like his stuff. This was uncharacteristic of the type of things that he posts, in my experience. But we just got to be better than that, in my view. Truth should be paramount, not haha, let's get them. Let's show that the other tribe is bad. Look, there's plenty of information out there. If we want to show that MAGA's bad, or the left wing have bad actors, it's easy. I mean, you just go out and find it. I mean, I just went and found Jacobin magazine, for God's sake. I mean, they're socialists. We don't need to jump the gun, to rush to judgment. I personally don't want people rushing to judgment about me. Tracy Harms said, it may be disreputable to float suspicion this early, but it's an option. Of course it's an option, Tracy. I mean, I can say anything on here, but virtually, as long as I'm not defaming somebody. The question is, ought I to do it? And if I do it, ought I to be taken seriously? The problem is, what happens is, especially with these, large platforms, they just post stuff and run with it. Their millions of followers eat it up because it serves their confirmation bias. And the next thing you know, it's the accepted narrative. It hasn't been proven, hasn't been adjudicated, nothing. I Like Numbers says, they said there was an explosion. That's not the usual arson arson pattern, but we'll see. Listen, I don't know. I will find out. Michael Reeland says, I caught a live show somehow. Half the stuff I post is illegal here in Serbia. Oh, my goodness. He's in Serbia. I didn't know that. Hey, Michael, you kicking ass in Serbia. I read your comment, by the way, from the other day, Michael. I didn't respond to it. But now that you're here, I'll tell you, I didn't see necessarily rationalization or rationalism involved in your post. I disagree with it. I don't know that there's a way to prove who's right in that scenario. I think I am, you think you are, and we would just have to agree to disagree. I think we could probably do a deeper dive on it if you'd like, but that would obviously be very time consuming. All right, what else do we got here? Let's see. Jonah Goldberg has an article today from the American Enterprise Institute.org where he talks about the growing number of people who identify as independent. And what he talks about is that somebody identifying as an independent or identifying themselves as an independent tells us absolutely nothing. We don't know anything about that person's views other than they don't want to be labeled a Republican or a Democrat. And I think that's a good point. And the whole point of labels, right, of words, is so that we can identify things, so that we know what we're talking about. But I find this is, more and more, when people say the left, the right, these words have very little meaning. Libertarian, for instance, the term libertarian covers such a wide array at this point that the term becomes basically useless. I don't know what they mean. Even, I might stir some shit up with this one. Even objectivism. There's so many people who now claim to be objectivists. You've got this, in my view, obscene right-wing variant of objectivism who supports Trump and frequently touts the left, as if the left is just, existing monolith of terror that's just out there waiting to rob us all of our existence. But we've also got these new guys calling themselves anarcho-objectivists and open objectivists. So while I think that we can make the argument that many of them are wrong, and perhaps we should, my only point here is that if somebody just tells you that they're an objectivist, it's very difficult to glean just from that what exactly they mean, even more so with a term like independent. But this labeling, it's so, in my view, often it's necessary. Don't get me wrong. If you have to, say that's a left-wing position, whatever, I get that sometimes it's necessary, but sometimes it's also very lazy. Right? Because you can say, but what about what the left does? Or what about what the right does? But they're not all on the same team. They're not all on the same wavelength. They don't all share the same ideas. And sometimes the ideas are very, very different. There's a lot of convergence with some right-wingers and some left-wingers on their hatred of Israel, for instance. They disagree about much else, but they can agree on that. So, and Akira Felix says, I call myself a radical capitalist. Oh, Ayn Rand says that's what we are. I would be inclined to think that the anarcho-capitalists would probably disagree with you. I'm not saying that the term is useless. What I'm saying is that just saying that you're a radical for capitalism doesn't convey much on its own. We have to get deeper into explanations and really explain what we mean, what we think, how we identify. Labels like that often don't do a very good job. We have to make some generalizations. I don't disagree that we have to make some generalizations. I'm saying that often these generalizations just don't capture exactly what we're talking about. Yeah, the facts of reality deeper with the ego, of course, are true. But when you're communicating, which is what I'm talking about, you have to take into consideration the subjective perception of the people with whom you're communicating. And oftentimes just saying I'm an independent or I'm a Republican, or I'm a Democrat, or I'm a libertarian and an objectivist doesn't tell the person much on its own. You have to be willing to explain, to get in deeper with it. When we act as if these labels are standalones that are conveying a mass amount of information that is going to allow somebody to understand what we're talking about, we make a very big error, in my view. Let me see what else we got. Do we want to keep going, or should I just call it quits because I'm here alone in hell? I've already put in the work, right? Persephone's saying, no, she's shaking her head violently. She doesn't want me to leave. She's obviously staring at me again from the other day. But, whatever. We're not going to pick on Persephone. Persephone is absolutely wonderful. Let's see what we got. Donald Trump wants to employ troops in Portland. He says it's a war zone. It's a shithole. Things that have no real bearing on reality, but he says them anyways. And, I haven't been there. So, I mean, even I can't say for certain. I just know that the accounts from people who are there, by and large, that I'm hearing are saying, no, it's not what Trump says it is. He's been blocked by a judge from deploying the National Guard from Portland. So now he wants to take the National Guard from California and send them over there. Now, there's an irony here that what happens if you send in the National Guard or the troops to disrupt these small, protests or whatever, oftentimes you incite problems. People now rebel against what they may see as an occupying force or as people there to violate their rights. And it just makes it worse. It does not make it better. Yeah, Ian Gilmore says the people are speculating that Trump is watching footage from 2020. I've heard the same thing. I don't know that's accurate, but maybe it is. I Like Number says, as long as you take their Antifa badge, they should mostly leave you alone. Antifa. There's another, in my view, absolutely worthless label that's tossed out there. Basically, whenever Trump and his allies don't like a specific group, they say, yes, it's Antifa, it's Antifa, it's Antifa. They even had this guy the other day on Jesse Waters. I don't know who saw it, but this guy goes on there and he's got a mask on, and they tout him as an ex-member of Antifa. And he's there to, break down and tell the secrets. Like, how the hell do we believe this masked guy on the show? Oh, that seems really on the up and up. From the same crowd, by the way, who constantly rails against anonymous sources, the masked guy saying he belonged to this group, that's very amorphous to begin with, but we're going to take his word and Jesse Waters' word. Some people call themselves Antifa. Sure, I'm sure they do, and I'm not saying the group doesn't exist. I'm just saying that it's really blown, I believe, out of proportion. Tracy Harm says, perhaps they hope to incite violence by doing so. I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't put it there. I mean, some people do. I'm very careful with ascribing motives. Just because it's too easy to get it wrong, because the motives are inherently subjective. I mean, you can often glean them from a person's actions, but it's a difficult thing to do. Kira Felix says, why is that a reach? No, Ian Gilmore says to Akira Felix, who thinks it's a reach, that Trump might be watching the things. The videos from 2020. I don't know. Trump just said the other day that last year he warned that Osama bin Laden was going to attack. So I don't know. I mean, I've heard him say some pretty wacky stuff. He's now saying that he predicted bin Laden was going to be a menace. We had to go get him. He said he wrote this in a book in the year 2000. Somebody that I trust, I don't remember who it was now, but posted that that's bullshit, that he actually didn't say that in that book. But also, it was known by 2000 that bin Laden was a menace. That we already tried to get him. Clinton tried to get him where? In God, I can't remember the two countries that he bombed, but Clinton bombed two countries, maybe Kenya. I can't remember, but Clinton bombed two separate countries going after bin Laden. So to say I predicted bin Laden was going to be a problem in the year 2000 really wouldn't be saying much anyways, but they're saying that it's not true, that Trump didn't actually write that. Okay, I don't know about that. Nicole Hingle says, I don't know what to believe when I watch news anymore. That is a serious, serious problem, Nicole, and I agree. Now, if if I'm reading something in multiple different places, like for instance the story Trump wants to employ the National Guard, okay, I can say, okay, Trump wants to employ the National Guard. That is probably true, especially given that I've heard him say it. And then you just look at a lot of a lot of different sources, a lot of different facts, and you can usually form a decent opinion on what's happening. But you're right, it is very difficult. You have the biased left-wing media that has been there all my life, and now you have a right-wing media sphere that in my view is absolutely unhinged. They are worse than anything I ever saw from the left-wing media, and I'm not a fan of the left-wing media, never have been criticizing it for quite a long time. Had argument with actual reporter about left-wing, and he said I got to push back on that, and the guy said, I don't want to say friend, but friendly with me. So, yeah, Nicole, you are correct. Michael Reelan says, I have debated a few Antifa people. They are not anti-government in the least. They just enjoy burning cars and pretending to be rebels while they collect their free money from the German government. All right. I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough. Whenever I tried to look these folks up, I get the same thing, that it's basically a loosely connected circuit of people who call themselves that, and there's really no organizational structure. Yeah, Trump was going after Fox the other day because they interviewed somebody that was critical of him, and to Trump, that was just too much. You should not have anybody on that's going to critique their leader. I just finished an awesome book, and I don't want to talk too much about it because I'm interviewing the author tomorrow, and we'll have it out in the interview out in a couple of days. But the objectivist writer Robert Trzynski, wow, dictator from day one, and he just throws it. He says, listen, we have to stop talking about a coming constitutional crisis. It's here. We have to stop talking about, a coming strongman. He's here. And he points out and, documents it all the way down the line, how bad it really is. So it's great. Speaking of books, you should all read Greatest Book Ever, View from a Cage by Michael Leibowitz. Thank you very much, Lee Timothy Frazier. Notice I said Frazier because you represent my book that's very good. Persephone's smiling right now, but I think she thinks I'm flirting with you, Lee, and she looks a little jealous. I'm just going to throw that out there. Take it for what it's worth. It's speculation. I've said before that you can't always know what somebody's motives are, and I'll stick to it, but it's becoming kind of a thing. Just I'm just saying. But yeah, this book is really good. And speaking of Trump, do you remember, everybody remember the guy I had the debate with the other night? And he turned out to be very cordial and friendly when I debated him on the air, did a little backtracking, was kind of nice. And I said, okay, I'll even go on his show, whatever. I was very nice to him. What led to that debate was him telling me that I wasn't competent to make the claim that Donald Trump is an authoritarian. The debate did not go very well for the guy, right? I wouldn't have rubbed it in. I will now because I'm going to tell you what happened. So the next day I posted something about Trump, and he comes in and said, I would like to see you prove that. I know you can't, he says to me. And I'm just thinking, like, are you mentally deranged? And I went and I actually said to him, I said, dude, you got utterly humiliated yesterday. Go away. I told him, just go. Like, I don't need this in my life. Like, you just go someplace. You know what I mean? So I don't know what's a weak claim, Tracy Harms. I don't know. No, he did not seem to have a point to make. Tracy Harms, what is the weak claim, Tracy? I'd like for you to please clarify. Tracy Harms is going to clarify. Persephone says, you're a moron, please go away. Is that what I said to him? Oh, that's what Persephone is saying now. He's a moron, please go away. Yeah, he went full cell gangster. Yes. Deeper with Diego says, no, Timmy's another evasive Oh, that guy. I thought coward. He spent that hour trying to promote himself and do a duet with you on the show. He didn't care about the subject. Yeah, he cared to try to come at me again the next day. And I just don't like when people talk to me like that. I just don't, because if you want to say, listen, I disagree and here's why, I'm all for it. But when you tell me, oh, you're incompetent, oh, you can't prove that, or things of that nature, just go away. Oh, okay, Tracy Harms. Thank you for your clarification. I thought, Tracy, that you were saying it's a weak claim to say that Trump is an authoritarian. Yeah, I mean, when I debated the guy, Tracy, I just bombarded him with facts, and he couldn't do anything with the facts. So, it was not but to the audacity to come back the next day and start the same thing again. And then he says to me, now, if you recall during the debate, he asked me if he said he previously thought I had malice toward Trump. And I said, oh, I do have malice toward Trump. But then somebody in the chat explained to me the definition of malice. I was actually mistaken about what malice meant. So when somebody told me what it actually meant, I said, oh, no, I don't have malice toward him. I apologize. I got it wrong, because I'm not infallible. I can indeed get things wrong. He says on Facebook, the way you backtracked, first saying you had malice and then not, that was the biggest takeaway from the debate. And I'm like, what? But that's what tells me maybe the guy is a little off upstairs. I don't know. I don't know. I know I won't be talking to him again. I have no desire to communicate with that fellow ever. Michael Relian says, I got the impression Tim was more interested in the effect words have on people than the truth. It's a manipulator's mindset. They think words are like magic spells to get what you want. Oh, yeah, I like numbers. It was you. Thank you. Yes. Let's see. We got some people here in the private chat. Michael Relian says there are more than a few cashing in on objectivism in the liberty movement in general. There are more people willing to throw money at people promising freedom. Here's a interesting take from Deeper with Diego. He says, what is that guy, retarded? The biggest takeaway from that debate is that you were honest and had a standard of integrity. Oh my God. Your post is good. I just don't know why you bring God into it. Like, I find that people bring God into a lot of things. Persephone was blaming God for something earlier, before we came on the air. People frequently will say Jesus Christ. So one day, a buddy of mine says, why do people say Jesus H Christ? What does the H stand for? And another buddy of mine says, oh, Herbert. It stands for Herbert. And the other guy says, really? No, not really. H doesn't stand for Herbert. Can you imagine that? Jesus, Herbert, Christ. But I don't know what the H means. Hopscotching? Lee says everything is Chuck's fault. Oh, speaking of Chuck, I watched Legally Blonde the other night. I watched it and I didn't hate it. I thought it was actually a pretty inspiring story. It was good. It was the story. She was heroic in a lot of ways. It was funny, but I thought it had a good message. It was a good story. It wasn't at all what I thought. I thought Legally Blonde was going to be basically like a Clueless, but going to get a law degree. But that's what it was. It wasn't that at all. And I realized that early on when she was going to buy dresses and the sales lady thought she was going to scam her. She says, oh, here comes another dumb blonde with her daddy's credit card. Let me go scam her. And she couldn't because she knew everything about the dress. So turned out I liked the movie. It was enjoyable. But what I thought was, what reminded me of it was the Chuck. Because when she's interviewing the guy who's claiming he had an affair with the woman, she traps him up and she says, what's your boyfriend's name? And he says, Chuck. And then you figured out that he's gay. He's not having an affair with the lady. Hot blondes can still make it in the legal profession, says I Like Numbers. I wonder if I Like Numbers is a hot blonde, because we really don't know, right? I Like Numbers could be a male's name, female's name. We really have no way of knowing, although there seems to be a bias of assuming it's a guy. But could be a hot blonde. I don't know. And, I'm not opposed to hot blondes or hot brunettes, Persephone, so you don't have to feel bad. Hot women in general, I'm okay with. No real issues here. So, Greg Lewis says it should be Jesus R.H. Christ for red herring. Greg Lewis, you always come up with them, don't you? Like, you think you're so clever. You are pretty clever, though, so I'll give it to you. Let me see if I got another story here to talk about before I just leave altogether. I think there was something over here. No, I already talked about that, too. I got clips from Persephone, so that's good. All right, so are there any questions? Women are hotter because of capitalism. Yes. Yes. Trump has established that there's an opportunity for hot women in high office. Joseph says, Michael, what did you think of him saying that calling Trump authoritarian is inflammatory to the average American, as if you were calling him a Nazi, which is very specific? I thought it was ridiculous because authoritarian, you don't have to be a Nazi to be an authoritarian. There's been plenty of authoritarians that were not Nazis. All Nazis are authoritarians. All authoritarians aren't Nazis. And the idea, and I think the what he was trying to do and what people will do with that is when people think Nazi, me included, the first thing you think is Hitler. And when you think Hitler, you think Holocaust. And so now he's implying to me that by calling Trump an authoritarian, I'm equating him with the kind of evil that would commit a Holocaust. And then that would be an easier argument for him to attack. It's much more difficult to go after what I'm actually saying than to go at, then you can just go and make whatever you want up and, say that I'm saying Trump did this or Trump did that. No, I'm saying he's an authoritarian and more authoritarian than other people who have held the White House. Now, it's true that the executive branch of the government, with Congress's abdication and help, has been growing more and more powerful. Yes, Persephone, I did. I won't discuss the results. I did that twice. I discussed the actual results of Grok because the other people were such dicks and bragging about how, their debate prowess, and their people were bragging about their debate prowess. I do that generally for my own edification, not for everybody else. So anyways, that was his thing. If he could make the case that I was arguing Trump is akin to Adolf Hitler, then it's a much easier case to make rather than dealing with what I was actually saying. There's also this idea out there that almost that to be, if someone's an authoritarian, they must be getting their way entirely. No. Trump is an authoritarian. There's still roadblocks in his way of getting everything he wants. That does not mean he's not an authoritarian. When I say someone is an authoritarian, I'm saying if there were no brakes, this person would be doing this. And there's plenty of evidence out there for it that Trump is an authoritarian. I don't want to make the case again. If you want to see it, you can watch the debate. It's on the Capitalist Corner YouTube page. Absolutely. You should go read the book, I Like Numbers. It's called Dictator from Day One. The book is actually, the title of the book, Dictator Day One, refers to Trump saying, I will be a dictator on day one. So, what are you going to do? I would say go read the book and make the judgment for yourself. I find the book to be very good. It's very factual. And I think the case is obvious. I don't think Trump is a dictator right now because there's too many blocks in his way. I think that Trump would absolutely be a dictator if those blocks were gone. I don't think he would do what a George Washington would do. And I think there's plenty of evidence for what I'm claiming. There's plenty of evidence for his disregard of the Constitution, for his disregard of the rule of law, for his disregard of truth, and for trying to implement policies that are strongman policies. He's getting away with doing things right now that in the past in America, people would have said no way to. And for some reason, they're allowing it now. in large part, I think it's a result of the bias in the left wing media. I think that with the Democrats and the things that they did and the things that they said for quite some time has led to it. The COVID thing, people are very angry about that. There's a mass distrust of experts, and I think that Trump really fills that sort of void, or fills that vacuum and gives people that idea that they can use him to control things. Oftentimes, probably every time, I just don't know every case in history, the very people that put a strong man in office end up reaping the whirlwind from that. It ends up very bad for them. So do I think that technically I think Trump often behaves like a dictator. I don't think we could call him a dictator in the technical sense because there's still blocks against him. But the point of calling him a dictator is to raise the alarm bells so that he doesn't actually gain that type of power. George Washington reacting to the fact of Trump being president would be priceless, from Tracy Harms. I think George Washington would have kicked his ass. I mean, if we're going to be honest about it, I do. I think George Washington would have kicked his ass. That's, I don't know for sure, but I think that would have happened. I personally, this is not even a prediction that I'm making, so please do not take me out of context on this, right? It would not surprise me in the least bit if a year from now, maybe a little more, and I'm responding to JD Vance, the JD Vance comment from Akira Felix. I wouldn't be surprised if JD Vance led a movement at some point to have Trump removed from office, saying he's not well enough to be president, so that JD Vance can become president. That would not surprise me at all, based on my knowledge of history and, coups and undermined dealings in government. I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. I'm not predicting it. I'm just saying it would not surprise me if that occurred. It wouldn't surprise me at all if JD Vance did that. Yeah, I mean, Trump, he says, he jokes about gaining a third term. I remember when Trump was running, and I would point out things like, look, he says he's going to exacerbate the war on drugs and bomb, for instance, Mexico, and, go after cartels. That's just Trump. It's hyperbole. He says he's going to have mass deportations. But it's just going to be the criminals. People always assume he's joking. First of all, if he is, then I don't want that guy for a president anyways. But oftentimes it turns out he's not. He's done a lot of tyrannical things already. Now, those things are not affecting me personally. And it's really easy when they don't affect you personally to say, oh, yeah, that's not tyrannical. But rounding up people and shipping them to prison in another country without due process is the acts of a tyrant. And all his fanboys and girls can clap their hands like seals if they want. It doesn't make it any less tyrannical that he does it. They could clap their hands. For instance, the other day, I don't know who saw it, when the guy from ICE sprayed the woman in the face with what looked like bear mace, and all the sickening comments that were in Gunther Eagleman's feed about how that's what they voted for, how they're so happy about that. It was great. It was wonderful. This is not good. So again, for I Like Numbers, dictator right now, in the technical sense, I would say no. I think he has ambitions to be a dictator. I think he would be one if we get away with it. And I think he also, blowing up boats in the Caribbean is also tyrannical. Absolutely. So I think that, using Trump's word about dictator on day one, I don't really have an issue with it. But I mean, if you're going to pin me and say, technically, is he a dictator right now? I would say no. But the book is fantastic. Somebody else in the audience said they read it. I think that everybody ought to read it. Dictator from Day One by Robert Trzynski. Very good book. Why would he do that with the inside track on the 2028 nomination, which would give DeSantis a huge opening? I think it's easy to bully DeSantis. I think Vance knows it. I think Trump did it. I think maybe DeSantis's time has gone on the national scene. And I think that JD Vance probably knows that when Trump says he would run for a third term, he's not kidding. And I think that Vance knows that he would, he'd likely get the Republican nomination, meaning Trump. I'm not predicting it. Again, I'm saying I was thinking, and it wouldn't surprise me if it happened. All right, let me see if we got any more comments. Vance would lose MAGA by forcing him from office. I think it would be things change very quickly. I like numbers in politics very quickly. And there's things that could happen that I think could change that. The one thing in all this 10 years now of the Trump phenomenon that I've seen where he was vulnerable was in regard to this Epstein stuff. And if they can turn that against him at some point, again, not a prediction, it would not surprise me if it happened. All right. Look, do I think it's more likely for Democrats to give up socialism or for Republicans to give up Trump? First of all, well, I don't know what you mean, Race. I don't think that your average Democrat is a socialist. I think there are socialists within the Democratic Party in that caucus with the Democrats. I do not think that your average Democrat is a socialist. I think that that's hyperbole that people use. I think it's lazy talk, but I don't think it's true. Now, if you're asking me, do I think the Democrats would give up on AOC and Bernie Sanders and Mamdani before the Republicans will give up on Trump? I don't know. No, Trump could not run for vice president and then become president. Michael Reelan, you can't do that. No, I can't remember the exact text, and I don't want to go looking for it. But no, you cannot. Okay, capitalist thought of the day. Question of the day: what the hell should be the capitalist thought of the day? I'm going to use my friend Carlos as an exhibit. My friend Carlos in prison, I may have used this before, but I don't really care. I'll use it again. My friend Carlos in prison learned how to braid hair. He's absolutely phenomenal at braiding hair. He got out of prison and he went and got just a booth. He was in a booth at a hair salon where he was allowed to braid hair. He now has his own spot where he braids hair. Now, he is only been out of prison now less than 3 years, and he's at the point now where he's hiring people. The people are now working for him. This is purely due to hard work and a little bit of talent, and no doubt, but his hard work has led him to be a success already, less than 3 years out of prison. If somebody coming out of prison can be an entrepreneur and make a success, then there's very little excuse for the rest of us. I get it. There's regulations, there's impediments to growing business, there's impediments to success, but we still can do it. I would like just everybody be like Carlos Rebolo. Check him out on Facebook, Freedom Braids. Very, very inspiring guy, very inspiring story. All right, let's see. What could be the question? My question for you is twofold. One, if Donald Trump could get away with being a dictator, would he? And two, is there a more than 0% chance that JD Vance will move to get Donald Trump removed from office before the 2028 election? So 2 questions. Would Trump be a dictator if he could get away with it? And 2, is there a better than 0% chance that JD Vance will move to get Trump removed from office before 2028? Quick, Kara Felix says Ian Gilmore did in Supreme Court force those states to put his name. I don't know what that is. But yeah, so please go to our YouTube station. Leave your comments there. The comments here are nice, but the comments there really help with the algorithm. If you go there, you answer the question, maybe just say hello, whatever, but do it. It helps with the algorithm. We want to grow this show. We're up to 543 at this point, 543 subscribers. We would really, really like to get that up to 1,000 soon. My YouTube station, I know, Lee, you want me to call it my YouTube channel. What the hell is the difference? Can someone tell me what the hell is the difference between a channel and a station? Because I don't see one. Lee, you're going on my list, at least for the rest of the day. You're on my list. And you're the only person on it. Persephone, you keep making that face, you might end up on it too. All right, listen. We are going to be back here tomorrow. Well, I am anyway, at 12 o'clock. I'll likely be alone again. So if you enjoy my company, please join me here. We will have a lot of great things to talk about. We've got some great things coming up this week. I've talked for just about as long as I can. I suppose I could sing a song if you'd like. I really like the song by Bonnie Tyler, Holding Out for a Hero. I never knew that was Bonnie Tyler. Bonnie Tyler sings my absolute favorite song in the world, Total Eclipse of the Heart. Total Eclipse of the Heart, favorite song. And I just found out she also sings another one of my favorites, Holding Out for a Hero. All right. Look it. We're going to be gone. We're going to be back 23 hours. I love you. Hope you'll be here tomorrow. Remember, in the words of the great Mark Pellegrino, to always check your premises. Peace.